and welcome to Finance Conversations. This is the 50th episode of the Merging Life and Money Show, and I am super excited to be here today. For those of you who do not know me, I am your host, Marie-Jo César. I help professional women bridge the gap between life and money by acquiring and applying the relevant financial skills and knowledge they need to take control of their money, manage their finances, and understand that they can live their best life with the money they have. Thank you for joining in today. If you are watching the replay, make sure to type #replay in the chat and leave me some comments and questions. Welcome, welcome, and welcome. I come to you live every Thursday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to share valuable information about how to achieve financial wellness and live your life with means and meaning. As I continue to research my niche or my market target, as they say, today in part 3 of my Meaning of Money for Each Generation series, I will be addressing the financial realities of the baby boomer generation, my generation. So grab a pen and a notebook, as you might want to take some notes to share with family members, friends, colleagues, whomever you want to, because it is about sharing values that could benefit others. So if you have any question whatsoever, make sure to put them in the chat. And if you want to talk to me directly, I will share my contact information with you a little later in the show. And as you may know, the main objectives of the Merging Life and Money Show and my strong why is to empower as many women as I can with what I know about money and finance so that they can live their best life yet. So I work with professionals between the ages of 35 and 60 plus. And as I mentioned a few moments ago, it is important for me to gain a deep understanding of my niche market so that I can better serve them. So today, I will concentrate on my generation, that of the baby boomers, and I will focus on the following 3 points. Who are the baby boomers? Their main financial pressures, and last but not least, their attitude towards money. So let's take a look at who they are. The baby boomers, often known as the mature generation, refers to those born between 1946 and 1964. So the baby boomers are the generation that came after what they call the silent generation, those who were born before 1945. And they are also the generation before Generation X, the generation that I spoke about last week. And the children of the baby boomers are Generation X people or millennials. All right. So the baby boom began with World War II servicemen returning home and marrying. Okay, so this generation grew up in the 1950s when America was becoming prosperous and hopeful about the future. They grew up watching sitcoms like I Love Lucy, which depicted an idyllic 1950s family life. In reality, many baby boomers' parents wanted their children to grow up to be just like them, married, white-collar employees, living in suburbia with 2 or 3 kids, and driving around in the best cars. I will also point out that while baby boomers are often referred to as one large group, there are indeed 2 different types of boomers. And there is a distinct separation and some important differences between the 2 groups. So you have the earlier boomers and those born later, because we talk about a 20-year time frame, right? So this explains why this generation is as complex as it is large. So because of substantial changes in what I would say the political, the global, and the social landscapes of that 20-year period, the baby boomers can be separated into, I would say, two groups, as I mentioned: the early boomers, who were teenagers in the 60s, so that's way before me, and the generation Joneses, who were teenagers in the 70s. All right, so let's take a look at the early baby boomers. Those were born between 1946 and 1955, thereabout, right? So they grew up in a world that was rapidly changing. They were motivated by the shifting position of women, the changing economic environment, and the emergence of a counterculture hell-bent on leaving an indelible mark on the world. So the legends who spoke up for change inspired these early boomers to action. So they adored and they followed and battled with individuals such as Martin Luther King Jr., Gloria Steinem, and John F. Kennedy. These early boomers were devoted to re-evaluating the traditionalist worldview and orienting their world on principles inspired by their youth-led counterculture. So they did not hesitate to challenge the status quo and the decisions to enter the controversial Vietnam War that raised more questions than it answered, right? And along with that came the hippies protesting the war, the rallies for women's rights, civil rights, and gay rights. So when you put all that together, you can see a generation of born activists. Okay? So now let's talk about the generation Joneses, born between 55 and 64. Unlike the early boomers, they had no major icons to look up to. This generation did not have the idealistic and optimistic outlook of the early boomers. Okay, instead, they were feeling the effect of an economy that was drastically going down by then. We're talking about 10 years later. They grew up in a climate of economic hardship and diminishing post-war optimism, which marked their formative years, right? So Generation Joneses, the second part of the baby boomer generation, their home life was more atypical than that of the early boomers, right? So due to changes in the economy and employment availability, more households were compelled to have two working parents, right? So when they attended school, there were insufficient desks and books in the classroom because of the educational system inability to accommodate such a big group of people because it was a boom, right? So they were unwilling to put their children in the same circumstances. And as a result, families began to shrink in size, right? So they were having less kids. And when the pill became accessible, birth control pill that is, birth control and family planning were easier than they had been before. So as a generation Joneses enter their formative years, divorce was on the upswing, requiring youngsters to spend more time working independently and caring for themselves. While this was not the latchkey generation I spoke of last week, they lag behind, as I said, the Generation X, which witnessed a major increase in divorce rates and latchkey children. But the end part of the boomer generation, if you will, were the beginning of that whole latchkey, kids being raised by TD, etc. So while the economy tanked, the fuel cost skyrocketed, the oil embargo wreaked havoc on the country, and job opportunities just shrank, right? So Generation Joneses, which is the second half of the baby boomer, needed to develop greater self-reliance and learn to fight for their future, as they rapidly realized that nothing would be handed to them. Okay? So with a competitive job market, they recognize the need of putting their heads down and working hard, as the primary focus was on retaining their jobs. Okay, so this time of intense rivalry for job security has remained with the Generation Joneses, who gained their name by constantly trying to keep up with the Joneses for something more. So you do understand where this wanting to be like the Joneses comes from the second half of the baby boomer generation. So now let's take a look at the second point, which is, what are the baby boomers' main financial pressures? Okay, baby boomers are under a great deal of financial strain. No, that's not even a joke. They are confronted with dwindling pension, insufficient savings accounts, and an uncertain economic future. They are also concerned about the idea that their children will be unable to financially support them in retirement. So there is a heavy reliance on their kids being able to help them when they retire. Okay, that's a stress in itself. The recession has left a large proportion of baby boomers unprepared for retirement, and I'm referring to the 2008, I should say, financial recession, right? So this have left them totally unprepared for retirement, and many baby boomers are retiring later than ever before, deferring their benefit and reserving the right to work until death. Okay, fortunately, that's where it's at, right? Retirement savings are at an all-time low, and the combination of people living longer and saving less creates the ideal condition for financial difficulty in retirement, right? So these concerns appear to be particularly acute for lower income baby boomers who lack the financial means to prepare for retirement, yet will remain dependent on Social Security after they retire. So baby boomers are approaching retirement with significant financial problems, particularly the tail end of the baby boomer, right? And indeed, they have the greatest degree of financial instability, and according to a report by the Government Accountability Office. Okay, so that's what they foresee, and that's what is actually happening. So boomers are stuck with mortgage debt that cannot be refinanced. Okay, they face a nursing facility stay that might cost up to $1 million over a 20-year period. Yes. It is that expensive to have a reasonable standard of living in a nursing facility, right? And they're struggling with diminishing wages as they take part-time employment in retirement, right? So as a result, many baby boomers, retirees, are living below their means or even incurring debt to make ends meet, right? This has led to some experts to predict a huge increase in bankruptcies among older Americans. Okay, so as a late wave of baby boomers approaching retirement, the like of myself and many others, it is critical for them to understand how much income they may anticipate from Social Security payments and what measures they can take now to guarantee they receive all of the benefits they are entitled to. Okay, so I would say as well, so while their chief concerns are retirement savings, they have other financial stresses like healthcare cost and emergency savings. Okay, the suggested amount for an emergency fund is 6 months roughly worth of spending. But according to a study conducted by Northwestern Mutuals Planning and Progress, a startling 20% of baby boomers have less than $5,000. You hear me? Less than $5,000 in personal savings. And as a result, they are totally unprepared for any unforeseen cost, such as medical emergency or job loss. Additionally, 1/3 of this generation struggles to pay their monthly household bills on time, and almost 60% would be unable to meet their basic needs if they were to be laid off for a lengthy period of time. And I could tell you the pandemic was a forced layoff for a lot of people. So needless to tell you that currently the baby boomer generation is under a lot of financial stress. So I mentioned healthcare costs, right? And as you know, they are rapidly increasing, and baby boomers are particularly vulnerable. All right, so individual age 65 and over spend at least 41% of their typical Social Security income on healthcare, a figure that is predicted to reach well over 50% during the next 10 years, right? So take care of yourself. With the increase in or the betterment, I guess, in the medical field, people are living much longer. However, they don't necessarily, that generation do not necessarily have the financial means to sustain themselves through their golden years, sadly. Okay, this implies that baby boomers must save even more as they near retirement, which is a hard thing to do, particularly in this current state of the nation with inflation as an almost all-time high. Okay, so more than 1/3 of them cite healthcare expenses as their primary retirement concern. So in closing with that part, I would say that a sizable portion of baby boomers, let's say 27%, think that decreased healthcare cost will most likely assist them in achieving their future financial objectives, making healthcare a top priority, a top concern for them. Okay, so let's look now at the third point of today, the last point for today's show, which is baby boomers' attitude towards money. Okay, it's a lot to be said on that because the baby boomers benefited from historically low loan rates and high home prices, which boosted the value of their assets. And as a result, a lot of baby boomers have amassed a lot of wealth to participate in the largest wealth transfer in modern history, okay, which will benefit their children and also benefit their philanthropic endeavor. Okay, we have a ton of nonprofit entities that are well supported by baby boomers. However, not everything is rosy for baby boomers. Many still owe money and they still owe a lot of money because student loan debt that they had They tried to repay that early, which they did for some of them, which get themselves in debt later on in life. And the advent of credit card came about, and not knowing how to use those credit card did not really make things any better for them. And currently, as you know, a lot of them lack of saving because of all the debts, and they are not able to finance a comfortable retirement. Okay, so the older boomers are in a better position financially than the younger boomers, right? So the last 10 years, they are basically, a lot of them are struggling. So what to say, that even from the health standpoint, there is no long-term care system in place right now to care for all the baby boomers when they enter their older years. So that's a fact. All right. So many blame the economic downturn that happened in 2008 for the way in which boomers handle their money. Right. They say that because of this event, they are much more careful with their money and don't spend as much as they did once, but the damage was already done. And 2008 further aggravated the situation. So having been one of the most resourceful generation, because a few things was handed down to them from the wealthier parents. So having been one of the most resourceful generation when it comes to money, they have spent their entire lives trying to get ahead, and they have no intention of slowing down now that they have reached retirement age, or they are on the doorstep of retirement. Okay, so I am going to stop here for today. And as I referred to some statistical data, because I am a woman myself, part of the later wave. So my customers are widely boomers and Gen Xers. So I had to do a lot of research, and I'm finding a lot of things, and which is not just an American situation. It is a worldwide situation, particularly the countries who participated in the World War II and won. So today I talk about baby boomers' money habits, and I focused on defining who they are, and I looked at their main financial pressures, and we talked about retirement savings and healthcare cost, and I also touched on their attitudes towards money. So I'm going to leave you with these last thoughts. And early boomers, as we said, there are two categories of boomers. So the early boomers and the Generation Joneses, which is the other part of the boomers, are sometimes put together under the broad label, of being baby boomers, or the broad umbrella of being baby boomers, which makes sense in some respect, right? So early boomers and Generation Joneses were both products of an unprecedented birth rate, hence the name baby boomer, right? And they were born into a prosperous post-war era and had a stick to the man mentality that welcomed young culture. However, understanding the why behind the early baby boomers' optimism and the Generation Joneses' competitive drive is critical to developing a genuinely complete picture of the baby boomers' age. Okay? So, truth be told, they have entered their twilight years, but it is not too late to plan ahead, okay, for their own golden years. Still time. As they said, 60 is a new 40. So let's see. The jury's out on that one. So as you know, I like to end the show with a quote. And today, I chose two of them. And they are both from Gloria Steinem, whom I mentioned earlier. The first one reads, "The future depends entirely on what each of us does every day. A movement is only people moving." And the second one is still by her, and it reads, "The first problem for all of us, men and women, is not to learn, but to unlearn." Okay? So Gloria Steinem is now 87. She is a writer, a lecturer, a political activist, and a feminist organizer. Okay, so before I forget, let me share my contact information. I can be reached by sending. You could reach me by sending me an email at marijo. Let me start again. At mj@marijocaesar.com, or by sending me a DM, a direct message via Messenger. Okay. So I hope that you have enjoyed the show today. And for more information about how to achieve financial wellness from the inside out and live a purposeful life with the money that you have, join me next week, Thursday, at 5 p.m. Pacific time, 6 p.m. Mountain time, 8 p.m. Eastern time, 9 p.m. Atlantic time for my Bermuda pips, and 10 a.m. Friday, Brisbane, Australia time for my Australian friends. Thank you for being here today on the Merging Life and Money Show. I am your host, Marie-Jo César. I will be back again next week. Until then, continue merging life and money. Bye for now.